Our vision is to help entrepreneurs save 10 million hours over the next 20 years. So that's our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to help you reinvest 10 million hours onto what matters most to you, whether that's spending time with your family. Maybe it's, adding another vertical to your business. Maybe it's a passion project. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to start a podcast. Maybe you want to do some healing work and go on some retreats, or whatever it is that you want to do with your extra time. That's up to you. But ultimately, that's the vision, because it's hard to become better than rich if you're always working.
Welcome to the Impact Roadmap, a podcast designed to give you the practical, concrete steps to grow your nonprofit or future-forward business in a sustainable way. I'm your host, Joey Goon. Let's get into the episode. All right, friends, welcome to the Impact Roadmap podcast. Today, I have my personal life coach, professional and personal life coach from years past. You were my first life coach. And I can't wait to dive more into that. I'm so honored and humbled to have the opportunity to interview you today. You have a pretty impressive background, Andrew. So you are an international sales coach for top performers at Google, Salesforce, SAP, Bloomberg, Microsoft, small companies.
I don't know if you ever heard of them, but yeah. I work with some folks there for sure. Yep.
And then you've helped 6- and 7-figure earners achieve their highest potential. You were a top 1% producer of 40,000 sales reps, helped scale a business from 6 to 30 million. You've directed a team of 1,500 people, and you boasted 6 of the 10 highest grossing apps on the Apple App Store as clients, all before the age of 30. I know your work has also been recognized in both local media and national media. You're a premium medium contributor. And I didn't know this, but this is impressive. You've appeared on NBC. That is super cool. We have to talk about that. Yeah. You're an industry leader in the concept of leadership and psychology of performance. And you help any sales leader looking to grow and connect to meaning and purpose. And I think you and I can both relate to, like, you need to have that if you're trying to have a top performing organization and you really want to find fulfillment through your business and your life. And your system in doing that in your business is better than rich, which I can't wait to talk more about that today. Andrew Biggs, welcome to the Impact Roadmap podcast, my friend.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. And I love what you're up to here. I love the mission that you bring into the world, Joey. So I just want to reflect that right back to you that, I know a lot of people listen to this show. I know you're making a tremendous impact both through this show and the work that you do day to day with your organization. And it's also been really cool to watch you and your family, as you begin to grow and expand there, because when I first met you, I think you were dating, Steph, but now it's official. You got the baby, and, you're going on vacations and having fun and building this life with her. And it's really amazing to see. So congrats on all the success, both personally and professionally, man. Glad to be here.
Man. Appreciate you. I have a little bit of appreciation too for you. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you were my first life coach, personal and professional development coach, and you introduced me at a very young point in my life to the concept of personal development. I didn't know what that meant. And I was 22 years old, this kid who had just graduated college. I just started in my career in wealth management, which was really sales. And of course, your background is helping sales professionals be top performers. And I was building a book of business. And I remember my friend Peter called me, who's a college buddy of mine, and said, "Hey, I'm going to this thing. I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but I know it'll change your life." Hard to say no to.
Yeah.
And so with blind trust and excitement and just kind of leaning in from a place of curiosity, I attended. And he was right. It changed my life, and it set me on the path that I'm currently on. And what I love most about you and your coaching when you coached me is that you provided the tools, but you didn't do the work for me. You asked the questions, but you never gave me the answers, because you knew deep down that when the mind stops speaking, the soul can reveal itself. And like deep down in our souls, you knew, and you pushed us to find the answers. And you also taught me how to quiet my mind so the answers can reveal themselves, like through taking space. And we did breathing exercises and meditation and yoga and exercise. And we connected emotionally to others. And you taught us how grounding that could be, like this deep, real, raw, vulnerable connection. And it's that type of connection that I feel most men are raised to believe that they shouldn't exercise that type of vulnerability, but you taught us different. And because of that, my life has become far richer and far more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. And the questions that I started asking myself when coaching with you started changing. The people I was attracting into my life, like my wife, started changing. Our business started changing. Opportunities started revealing themselves in ways that I could have never imagined. And it was because you taught me how to up-level my frequency. So fast forward to today, I have an amazing wife. We're madly in love. We date each other, even with a 5-month-old. We dance in the kitchen and our family thinks it's weird. And I think that should be the rule, not the exception, to continue loving each other and being weird and quirky. And we built our dream home. My relationships are richer. And it's not just my relationships with others. It's my relationship with myself, because you taught me how to love me. And for that, I can't thank you enough.
Well, thanks, man. And, that's a lot to take in for me to say, okay, wow, that's, seeing this tremendous impact and the ripples of the work. And, it's one of those things. It's kind of like being a teacher, or a high school basketball coach or whatever. And I'm a baseball coach for my son's little league team. And last night we got bounced from the tournament. So we did not win the championship this year. But the whole point I'm just trying to make is these people come into your lives and, you don't always see the fruit. It's not every single time you hit a home run out of the park and you're able to see something fully all the way through. And, but it's moments like this when that gets reflected back that, the full gratitude of the experience can be reflected. And yeah, man, I mean, loving yourself. I mean, what a lesson for you, the listener, that if you want an amazing life like Joey, and you want love and connection, you got to start with yourself. And, that's not easy. It's something that I struggle with, even though it's something that I talk about a fair amount of the time. It's a daily battle sometimes, man, to be honest. So, quick follow-up. Is there like a technique that really helped you, or what was the realization? What was the moment where you were like, okay, I love myself now? Was there something like that, or was it a gradual process? What would you say? It's
not a revelation. I still struggle with it every single day. Mm-hmm. So when I'm on the highest highs, I record videos of myself to myself. And I read a book by Kamal Ravikant called Loving Yourself, right? That's the name of it. Have you heard of that book?
I know the author. Like your life I like him, but I don't know that book. Yeah.
So I read that and I was like, well, this just makes a whole lot of sense, but it's a process. It's swinging the bat, even though you know that you're not always going to hit a home run. It's telling myself every single morning, looking in the mirror, even though it's awkward, and saying, I love myself. I embrace myself. I accept myself. Knowing that sometimes at the end of the day, man, like running a business, I feel defeated. I feel sometimes I'm not like aligned with doing the things that I'm like most connected to, like my superpowers. I'm not always in that state of energy that I'm just like on another level. So like at the end of the day, I'm not always like this happy-go-lucky, super like positive, emotional guy. I am to other people, but not always to myself. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a process. I love, I have a yoga teacher that I follow on YouTube. His name's Travis Elliott. And he said, life is not a performance, it's a practice. Mm-hmm. So I just come back to that practice every day. And those videos of me recording, like, when you're just in those like emotional states where you just can't get higher, it's like the energy is on high def instead of standard def on like a radio frequency. Mm-hmm. Just record yourself at that state and be like, dude, this is it. Like I figured out life. Like I'm vibrating on all different levels right now. And just being able to come back to that energy, it just kind of shocks yourself out of whatever lull you might be going through.
Totally agree. And that's the thing. A lot of times when we're in a bad mood or we're off or we're triggered, it's just forgetting something that we already knew. So when you remember that, okay, actually, I do have clarity. I do have a sense that everything is working together, for my good. It's all working out in the end. Like this too shall pass. Like all the wisdom that we have in those high moments, can get lost, right? Because the mind's going a million miles a minute and the soot is being, drummed up from the bottom of the riverbed. And, it's tough to see clearly. So ultimately, once that soot settles, you can see clearly through the river, and life becomes a lot easier. But that's it's an endless battle, to your point. So I'm glad that you reflected that, so that people don't think you're a happy-go-lucky person every single day, all the time, to all people. Because, I think sometimes people go, that sounds good. Congratulations, Joey. I'm glad you and your wife can dance and sing, but you don't know my wife, or you don't know my husband, or whatever. It's like, well, it's not always like that, but when it is, let's celebrate. So I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. It is all about celebrating those little moments, and they're so easy to pass over. So easy to pass over. So, I can humbly admit, since the first part didn't sound humble, it's like, I have this idealistic, perfect life. That's not true at all. And by the way, I say things to myself that I would never say to anybody else. But I can humbly admit, I'm at a point in my business where I'm beyond my level of professional development. And so selfishly, today's episode is as much for me as it is for everyone else, because that is the whole methodology of Better Than Rich. So let's talk about this. Like, your company, Better Than Rich. What does it mean to be better than rich?
Sure. It's a great question. And I think, every person should define that for themselves. But for me, it's really about, okay, what really matters? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? And what's going to ultimately cause not just happiness or joy, but fulfillment? What does it mean to be deeply fulfilled? And just really satiated with how amazing your life has become. And then, a lot of times we're trying to fill that lack of fulfillment with money, or some proxy, right, of that. Okay, it could be like a really nice house, or it could be a really nice car, a really nice vacation, or a really good looking significant other, or whatever we want to say. But it's like, ultimately, these are all external things. And so that the world has said, okay, this is what a rich life looks like. Ultimately, what we want to do is say, hey, by the way, there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff. We want you to be rich. We just want you to be better than rich, right? And so that's the idea is, yes, go make a bunch of money. Yes, become extremely successful. Yes, use shows like this to up-level your game and to make sure that you are performing at the highest level. But ultimately, use shows like this to enjoy the ride. Use content and what you're learning and books and resources and your practices that you're doing on a daily basis to enjoy the journey. And ultimately, that's much more about purpose, meaning, connection, and authenticity, in my opinion. And so that's really what we talk about quite a bit.
For sure. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really well summed up. So and just to clarify too, so your current business is not really so much on the personal life coaching side. It's really coaching business owners how to scale. Right?
Correct. And then one of the caveats there is, of course, we want to land the plane on understanding what your purpose is, but also it's really tough to enjoy your life as an entrepreneur or the leader of an organization, whether it be a nonprofit or a business, if you are continually spinning your tires at the work, especially for entrepreneurs. The joke I like to make is, congratulations, you've escaped the 9 to 5. That's really awesome. And ultimately, sometimes we've escaped the 9 to 5 only to end up working 24/7. So I don't know if you can relate to that sometimes, Joey, but it's like, oh, cool. I no longer work 9 to 5. Now I work 80 hours a week instead. So what it's really about is, okay, from a business ROI perspective, what we really help business owners do is take a look under the hood, through the lens of purpose and meaning in their personal lives, but ultimately, how could we integrate things like automation? How can we integrate things like delegation? How can we systemize your business more and kind of corporatize your entrepreneurial experience so that you can scale? Because a lot of times what happens is, you're a great example of this, but it's kind of this passion project. It's this this family thing that are coming together, or it's just something that you're really fired up about. Or maybe you see this window of opportunity, you start a business and you're like, oh my gosh, if I could make 6 figures, my whole life would be revolutionized. Like, this would change the trajectory of my family. And maybe that's true. And also, if you have to work, 50, 60, 80 hours a week to make your six figures, well, now you just have you have a decent job, right? And I also think there's kind of that other, side note, which is like, well, six figures doesn't really go as far as it used to, anymore. But no matter what your number is that you need to make or you want to make, ultimately, what's the point? The point is the lifestyle, right? And so if we can get things off your plate as an entrepreneur that aren't worth your time, that's how you're going to up level. I mean, here's a quick exercise every single one of you guys can do. You, the listener, as you're, if you're driving, please don't do this. Maybe do it in your head if you want to. But if you're on the treadmill, pull out your notes app, or if you're at home, pull out a notebook and a pen and just write down, hey, what's my target income for the year? Like, let's say the next 12 months, right? How many hours a week do I want to work? And then how many weeks of the year do I want to work? Because if we know those three things, we can run a simple equation and say, okay, I'm going to divide my target income by, the total number of hours I'm willing to work this year, and it's going to spit out some sort of number. And we have people do this all the time, but what this number is going to spit out is the amount of money you need to make every single hour you're working in order to hit your income goal. Well, what happens when people run the math? Like the lowest we typically get is like $50 an hour, and then we get some people where it's like 175 or 125, or some people are like 250. We had one guy's like, I need to make $450 an hour for me to hit my income goal of, $1 million this year, or whatever. And also take 12 weeks off for my family or all these different things that is their vision. Cool. Well, are you really going to be able to make 50, 125, 175, 250, $500 an hour? Let's pull out your calendar and really see where the rubber meets the road, because how many of the activities that you're actually doing on a daily basis are reflective of that number, are worthy of that number. And oftentimes, most of the time in the day, if we're really honest with ourselves, we're kind of nowhere near that number. If you need to make, average $200 an hour in order for you to hit your income goal, and then you're doing a lot of administrative tasks or messing around with your CRM or wasting time or scrolling on social media or replying to comments or trying to drum up business and prospecting, it's like, honestly, a lot of that stuff can be either run by a technology. I mean, look at what is happening with AI and all the advancements there, but could a technology do some of that work for you? And if a technology can't do it, maybe a virtual assistant can do it. And so that's why we also have virtual assistant services, mainly out of the Philippines, but we have an agency that provides those sorts of services to people to just help them spend time on what matters most to them. Our vision is to help entrepreneurs save 10 million hours over the next 20 years. So that's our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to help you reinvest 10 million hours onto what matters most to you, whether that's spending time with your family. Maybe it's, adding another vertical to your business. Maybe it's a passion project. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to start a podcast. Maybe you want to do some healing work and go on some retreats, or whatever it is that you want to do with your extra time. That's up to you. But ultimately, that's the vision, because it's hard to become better than rich if you're always working.
What was a problem that you initially discovered? Like, what conversations or series of conversations were you having that prompted you to start this business? Like, how'd you figure out that there was such a need for something like this?
Well, I think a lot of people have this draw towards personal growth. They have this draw towards wanting to become better. And one of the biggest thing that stops them is this pull of the normal, what's comfortable to them, the way they've always done it. And oftentimes what happens is entrepreneurs would consistently come to us, they have these blinders on, and the blinders are, well, hey, well, what do you mean? I can't give up this time in my schedule, or I have to do it this way, or I have to have these tasks done every single day. And quite frankly, maybe that's even true, right? Hey, maybe a business would fall apart if those tasks weren't being done. But for the entrepreneur, oftentimes what happens is they see it as they have to do it, right? Sometimes we can be, as entrepreneurs or leaders inside organizations, whatever it may be, Well, we might have a little bit of like a control freak, streak in us, Joey. I don't know if you can relate to that at all, but just like, oh, everything's got to be perfect. Everything's got to be my way, and no one can do it as well as me. So if it's not going to be done exactly as I would say, I'm not going to delegate it or not going to get it off my plate. So that's really the problem that I continually saw. And if you want to actually, again, have that margin to be able to enjoy the entrepreneurial experience that drew you to entrepreneurship in the first place, which is the promise of freedom, right? Kind of like 3X freedom, time freedom, location freedom, and financial freedom. That probably drew you to entrepreneurship or leadership positions in general in the first place. Well, if you want to actually enjoy that, you got to figure these things out.
You bring up so many great points. So a client and a friend of mine's name is Greg Reed. He's an accomplished author and entrepreneur. And he just wrote a book with Bob Proctor, who's one of the business development moguls. And the book's called Thoughts Are Things. And one of the ideas they talk about in the book is what's common sense to you is genius to someone else. So one of the hardest things, you just brought this up, one of the hardest things for me to do as an entrepreneur in the past and still currently has been letting go of things, because there's this if you're listening to this and you're running a business, you don't have to be good at everything. And that seems like common sense, right? But I heard this from you. I went through your workshop, and my friend Corey Rimmel, who runs a number of businesses, I've heard this from both of you. And it's such great advice. And this is your genius. To you, it's common sense. But I'd never gone through this exercise, and it was an epiphany moment for me. And so I realized, okay, cool, I'm the bottleneck. So I made a list of the top 5 or 6 things that I wish I could do every day. And if I do these things, I'm energetic, I'm aligned, and I'm operating at the highest frequency. And then I made a list of the 10, 15, 20, 50 things that are opposite of that are outside of my zone of genius. And I've started making hiring decisions around those things. And so it's not that I don't care. Like for me, the operational stuff and tasks and those things, writing SOPs, it's not that I don't care about them. It's just they drain my energy and they're simply not my superpower. And so again, decided to start hiring employees that are synergistic and supplemental and smarter than me in certain areas. So you brought up a good point. Much of the bottlenecks in business are typically created by the business owner herself or himself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And relinquishing control, right, can be scary, but the truth is nobody becomes successful alone. And even successful solopreneurs, listening to this, you're going to cap yourself eventually. I was running a really successful coaching business for a long time, right, Joey, where it's okay, take on 10, 15 clients at $1,000 a month or something, and basically no expenses. There's a way for you to earn a decent living that way. Can you scale that to a 7-8 figure business? Not really. No one's going to run a 7 or 8 figure business by themselves. It's just not going to happen. And so if you don't get good at these things, then you've just put a limit on yourself. And again, maybe you're cool with that, but ultimately the people that we like to serve are people who are looking to scale to that next level, to go from 6 to 7 figures, to go from 7 to 8 figures, and so on. So that's really the operating range that we like to play in. And it's not uncommon for someone to come to us and, triple their business in a year or whatever, because they're ready and they're excited. It's a lot of work. It's not a snap of the fingers and it's done sort of thing. But if we actually learn the lessons that are needed, there's definitely formulas for success here. So
when you onboard a new business into your program, are there personality tests or assessments that you take them through, like Patrick Lencioni's, the 6 geniuses, to figure out what their strengths are, or the DISC or the Myers-Briggs or one of these other, do you take them through these types of assessments to figure out, here's what you should do, here's what you should stop doing?
We like CVI. It's kind of a core values index is what that's called. So kind of gives you a general sense. I also like wealth dynamics.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah. What'd you get? You remember?
Oh my gosh. I don't,
We'll have to look it up. We'll put it
Rainmaker.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, deal maker, I think. Deal maker.
Deal maker.
So, okay, cool. So I got creator. So it's like, yeah, there's these 8 different archetypes on the wealth dynamics, especially for entrepreneurs. That's really good. So understanding what your lane is, it can be really useful. A lot of times what we're trying to help people see is that you can't work in the business. Sorry, you can't work on the business if you're in the business. So right off the bat, it's, one of the things I want you to think about, listener, is, well, to the extent that you are a gear, like a necessary gear in the machine, a cog in the machine that makes the machine run, that's stopping you from scaling, because you're doing the activity, you're actually doing the delivery, you're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, you're doing, you're running the interviews, or like you're opening up the shop. We work with some franchise owners in the food space. We just signed a big deal with a company that has locations all across the country. And, a lot of times these franchisees, as successful as they are, they're getting pulled in and like making the food, behind the counter. And they're like, well, why would I pay someone $15 an hour to make the food when I'm already here? Like, well, so you could actually strategize ways to grow the business and actually think about, what is the entrepreneur's job? The entrepreneur's job is in a true business. We go back to like the E-Myth, like Michael Gerber, sort of philosophy. It's like, in a true business, everything is delegated. Everything is off the business owner's plate, and the entrepreneur runs the business. What does that mean? It means, honestly, working through a few key employees, working through a few key reports, and then working on strategizing ways to scale and ways to increase efficiency. I don't know, maybe that sounds boring to you. I don't know. It's one of those things where maybe you started a bakery because you really love baking, and now all of a sudden you're like poring over your QuickBooks numbers or something, and you're like, what did I get myself into? But ultimately, if you're going to be a true entrepreneur, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help you strategize and think about, what are some key movements I can make that are really going to move the needle. And it's like putting together a playbook. A lot of times, a great place to start, just as an example, would be your user experience. What is your user experience like when someone wants to, maybe someone's interested in working with you? Well, I'll give a great example. My son was in piano lessons, but the teacher was 30 minutes away. I'm a pianist, by the way. You can see the piano behind me. I don't know if y'all see that in the video, but my son's taking piano lessons, but it's a 30-minute drive away. I'm taking him to school one day and I see a big sign, piano lessons, open enrollment. Anyone interested, call this number. I literally call the lady as I'm driving him to school, right, to drop him off. So you can tell I'm pretty motivated to sign up, right? Because I'm sick of driving 30 minutes away to this other piano place. As sweet as that girl was, I wanted to call this person who was closer. And she, as I'm speaking with the new lady, the new teacher, she goes, well, hey, what's your address? I said, okay, here's my address, yada, yada, yada. She goes, well, I'm going to mail you an info packet. You look at the packet and you let me know what you think. And I was like, I'm on my way to school right now. I'll pull over and I'll read you the credit card number over the phone. Like, I'm ready to sign up now. And you want to mail me a packet? Like, there's so much friction that she's adding into this. It's like insane. Now, of course, she's probably not thinking about scaling a 6, 7, 8 figure business. She's probably thinking, how can I make a little bit of side income or something like that? Again, super sweet woman. But the whole point is, like, these aren't, that user experience is awful. And so what you want to think about is, how can I reverse engineer the ideal user experience? What's my customer prospect thinking right now at this stage of the user experience? And how can I move them to the next stage as seamlessly and as frictionlessly as possible? And that's what we help you do through Team and Tech.
Such a great story. I was sitting in the audience of an event, a mastermind recently, and speaking to us was a gentleman who said, stop trying to handle objections. He used to go, so when he freed himself up and he scaled this business, and I'll tell you what the business is in a second, but he scaled this business in a way where he freed himself up to go on sales appointments with his top reps. And they went to this person's business, and this person was like, oh my God, I don't really know. This is kind of overwhelming. They got to he had a 20-page PowerPoint deck. got to like slide 18, slide 19, slide 20. The guy looked at him and said, "Oh my God, kind of overwhelming. I'll call you later if I'm interested." So they go and, it's like they're going from appointment to appointment. They go to the next appointment. The woman stops him as he's presenting on slide 2 and says, "Where have you been all my life? I need this. Give me a contract to sign." And he goes, "Well, I just have 17 more slides to get through." And then the guy obviously, he says, "No, she's ready to sign the contract," right? Like, give her the contract. Let's move forward and let's get out of here. And so the moral of the story is, stop trying to find your 20 slide customers who are going to give you objections. And he's like, schools are teaching you how to handle objections. Stop going after no. Go find yes. Who are your second slide customers? Andrew, you were her second slide customer, and here she is trying to send you some paper thing in the mail to make the process more difficult than it is. And the person who gave us that advice was one of the founders of Priceline.com.
Nice.
And so he finally freed himself up and was able to make those sales calls and kind of help the team think differently about their second slide customers. So as the business owner, like to Andrew's point, when you stop focusing in the business, you can start focusing on the business, and you can train and just kind of look at everything from a 30,000 foot view and how to create efficiencies and make your company go further faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that story. And I think at the end of the day, what we're all trying to do is we're trying to hit objectives. We have numbers we want to hit, or we have goals we want to reach. But the understanding that in order to do that, you are going to need to kind of tighten some stuff up. The truth is that a lot of times there's a lot of tribal knowledge in businesses, especially as they're just getting started, or maybe they've been around for a long time, but they just never really grew to a point where, true like standard operating procedures or different things like that were necessary. Or maybe they were necessary and they just ignored it. But unless we really embrace that sort of thinking, like, hey, there are processes inside our business. A lot of times people come to us and they say, "Well, Andrew, this sounds cool. You want to create systems for my business. What does that even mean?" So I have a definition of a system that I'll give to you. This is my favorite definition, which is a system is a series of processes, policies, and technologies that aid the organization towards its goals. So again, a series of processes, policies, and technologies that aid the organization towards its goals. So what's a process? A process is a series of if-then statements. So everything in your business that's even remotely predictable, we should have a process for, right? If this happens, then we do that. If the order is over $20,000, then we're going to do X for them. Or if the customer is late to the appointment, then we do Y. Or just everything is organized through these if-then statements. What's a policy? A policy is a series of rules that have to be followed. That could be internal policies. This is how you request a day off, or at the end of the day, this is how you clock out, or how we log our numbers in the report, or what we need to put into the CRM, or whatever internal policies you have. And then there might even be customer-facing policies. So what are your customer-facing policies if someone wants a refund, or someone's not upholding their end of the bargain, or something like that? You can have those policies in place. And then, of course, technologies is probably the most self-explanatory, but there's so many technologies out there, and they don't cost a lot. I just got off the phone with a Go High Level representative because we're probably switching our CRM to them. And they're like, it's $97. And that might be like one of my more expensive softwares. I got other ones that are like $5 a month, $10 a month, but they're saving me so much time. And, why wouldn't you sign up for some of these tools? So, series of policies, processes, and technologies, run with that. And then ask yourself, where does my business need those things?
What are initiatives or services that you offer that you're most focused on or excited about right now?
So we kind of have two verticals that I'll speak to. One is the virtual assistants. So right off the bat, one of the biggest things you could do if you looked at your dollar per hour rate that you need to make to hit your income goal, and then you looked at your calendar and said, wow, there's a mismatch here, right? I need to be making $150 an hour, but most of the work that I'm doing is $25 to $50 an hour, if I were to be honest, or $10 an hour work or whatever. Well, right off the bat, one of the best ways to do, way to free that work up is to hire a virtual assistant. Why a virtual assistant? Well, first off, it's kind of the lowest hanging fruit. I have different buckets of different tasks I kind of bucket it into under $25 an hour, 25 to 75, 75 to 200, 200 plus, or something like that. There's in that 25 to $75 an hour range. There's some tasks in there that maybe a virtual assistant can't do, but they can certainly do pretty much anything under $25 an hour, like responding on social media or messaging people or reminders for clients or managing my inbox or, updating our CRM, anything administrative. I really don't want to be doing. If you're doing your own paperwork, then you are your own virtual assistant, right? You are the assistant to yourself. And so freeing up right away is huge. That's one vertical. The other vertical is a program we call operator to owner. So this is about taking that business operator who's stuck in the business, who is that cog, and teaching them how to be an owner. And we have 12 different lessons that we walk people through. It's a 4-month program. And at this point, we've put, about 50 people or so through it. It's relatively new. We launched it in January. But it's gotten tremendous success, Joey, where, people are really raving about the curriculum. It's really well designed. And ultimately it's about taking a look and saying, okay, soup to nuts, let's start with your brand. What's your brand, identity? And then how do we bring that forth and then bring that into the message and then reverse the customer experience from there? All the way through, okay, here's how you manage your internal staff. Here's how you create KPIs. Here's how you want to make financial decisions. So it's kind of like an MBA in a box over here on the coaching side. And it's got group calls, private calls, the whole works. But operator to owner is kind of our premier coaching plan.
That's awesome. Do you think there's levels in scaling that are more difficult as you sort of navigate in a growing business? Like, is it that $100,000 level? Is it the $1 million level? Is it not a revenue number, but it's a number of employees? Is it a type of product or an industry that you're in? Like, where are there levels along the way that are more difficult to navigate, or perhaps industries?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that number might move based on your type of business and those sorts of things. Are you a service-based business? Are you a product-based business? Our bread and butter is definitely a little bit more on the service side, although we have worked with product-based companies. What I would say, my old CEO, when I was managing the company that you mentioned earlier that scaled from 6 to 30 million, what he mentioned has always stuck with me. And he says, every time your headcount triples, you kind of need to reorganize the business. You need to restructure it. Okay, so let's run some math on that. All right, three. So you have 3 people in an organization. Fair enough. When that triples gets to 9, okay, we got to rework some things, right? We probably need new communication workflows and maybe restructure the org chart or whatever. Okay, 9 times 3, 27, right? Okay, there's a growing level of complexity. There's 27 people on the team. If we use the same model we had back when we had 9 people, the business is going to break. So we need to reorganize it. Okay, 27 times 3, what's that? 81, right? So now we're at 81. Did I do the math right? I think so. Yeah, 81. So 81 is the next number. Okay, and these are rough ballparks, but you get the idea. It's like as you start to approach that, it's going to break. And here's what I continually would see people come to me with. It's like they've built a program where maybe they could have 50, 60 employees or whatever, but the problem would be as it got higher, they would always have a higher limit, like an upper limit. It would always break down because the infrastructure wasn't built for that next level. So maybe what's gotten you here has been perfect, but what's gotten you here is not going to get you there. That's really the story of no matter where you're at, what's gotten you here isn't going to get you there. So you have to build for the next level up if you want to scale into that level. And that's really hard for us to think about as business owners, because sometimes it might feel like overkill at the current level. But I'm in a growing market here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where people are moving here every single day. It's this little hidden gem. People are fleeing the big cities and moving into secondary markets like this. And here's the deal: over the next 15, 20 years, this area is gonna expand quite a bit. It's gonna grow quite a bit. If I'm planning this city, I got to be thinking not for what our capacity is today, but if I'm redesigning the roads or the electrical grid or the sewage system or whatever, and I'm designing something, I got to think about where we're going to be 30 years from now. Now, you may, as a business owner or the leader of a nonprofit, whatever you do on a daily basis, you might not need to be thinking 30 years down the road, but you probably need to be thinking at least 3 to 5. And it's like, are you building for today and tomorrow? Or are you building for at least 12 months, 36 months, 5 years, 10 years down the road? Again, that's a delicate, place to be. And you do need some wisdom to know when to do what. Is this more of a short-term thing or a long-term thing? But what we want to do is we want to help you start to see the bigger picture and build those roads out to handle the capacity for when you do get to 81. And then you get to 243, right? And then you get to that next level and that next level and so on and so forth. Does that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. I appreciate the answer to the question. And I would also encourage everybody here, are you familiar with EO?
Yeah. Yeah. They're awesome.
I'm an EO. It's basically, for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, it's just, founders, CEOs, presidents of companies that are running 7-figure businesses, and you come together and it's kind of like a strategic advisory board. It's people who are going through similar obstacles, challenges, opportunities in business, and they're kind of like, it's a sounding board for you and you for them. And we were talking the other day in our EO forum meeting, which is a structured meeting that we meet once a month. And we were talking about exit strategies. And it was interesting to know that not everyone in the room had a very solid plan on when they wanted to exit. And I think it was because not many of us didn't have the, a why behind why we would exit. Right now, it's just kind of we're having fun, we're having a great time, we're scaling, we're learning. It's the process, it's the journey. It's really exciting. It's invigorating. And so just keep one of the things, it's identify why you want to scale. Andrew, you bring up great points in that, maybe you go from a company that's, one person, you just figuring it out in the basement of a Chinese restaurant, I don't know, to go into, from 2 to 4 to, 10 to 50 to 100. But why? Why are you doing it? And what is that level for you to where set that level of I'm having fun and I don't need to grow anymore. That's okay too. And I think we get in this, Andrew, what's your take on that? Because I feel like sometimes we're we have to scale because that's the thing that we're told that we have to do. In this hustle culture, we have to work harder and, make more money. And then you get to the end of your life and you're like, wow, I've built a $1 billion company, but I missed my life. So it's a delicate balance. Just curious to get your take on that.
Yeah. My business partner and our coach were just having a call about this yesterday. So we were discussing kind of what season are we in? Are we in growth mode? Are we in stabilization mode? Or what sort of season are we in? And, we kind of landed at kind of a steady growth mode, but we don't need to be, growing exponentially right now. But the point is, what season are you in? Do you know, and are you willing to kind of lean into that season? Let's not fight it. Let's make sure we're wearing the appropriate apparel for the season. I don't want you to go out in a parka in the summer and, or in flip-flops in the winter. So are you matching the season that you're in? The other question is how much is enough? And that's very much a better than rich question, right? Where it's okay, I'm probably not going to be the richest man in the world. Honestly, that sounds awful. Yeah. I don't want to be, Jeff Bezos. I want $10 million, right? We're not there yet, but we're working on it, Joey. 10 mil is the number. And because at that point, the reality is I can pretty much live the lifestyle that I can't imagine needing any more than that.
You can do anything you want.
Yeah.
If family, have experiences,
if we made more, great. Maybe we were able to write a few additional checks to charities that are associated with you and your squad, man. But ultimately it's I can write some pretty big checks if I have $10 million in the bank too, and still feel really beautiful about my life. And then it becomes about impact. It becomes about being with family. It becomes about the legacy that we're building. I mean, ultimately, one of the biggest legacies that I'm connected to is the legacy of my 2 children. And, life starts to shift and gets a little bit more narrow and local. And of course, I want to make an impact and I want to help, 10 million hours be reinvested in this sort of, big, hairy, audacious goal sort of way. But if I do all of that and I screw up my kids, if I do all that and my wife hates me, if I do all that and I, keel over at 55 because I had a heart attack and didn't take care of my health, what's the point? So making sure your number or your enough level is really important. And, ultimately, again, the whole exit idea, no one ever, most people get, when they start their business, they're not really thinking about exits because they're starting at something that they're passionate about. But ultimately, everything has its expiration date, and maybe you won't be as passionate about it later, or life circumstances might change, right? And so building a business that you even could exit, if you're, just getting back to the systems thing real quick on that, if you have nothing but tribal knowledge and, just a handful of key employees is really the only reason the business is running and doing so well, that's not a business that anyone wants to buy. Right. So you can't sell the business if you are the business. But if you are, everything is delegated and automated, you have standard operating procedures for everything, that's a business that becomes really attractive to a purchaser.
For sure. And I love, it's like doing the things that you're recommending on this podcast. Like by doing those things, you're setting your business up for the potential to sell it. That's the key distinction there. It's like the potential is there. So if you go through a season of life and you're having a great time, and then you have a couple kids and you're like, this isn't for me anymore, you can exit. You've got that option. But if you're not doing this work, Andrew, you're in the business forever, or the business goes with you.
Right. Or or you end up having to sell for way less than you could have gotten. Or ultimately, maybe you never sell and you drive it into the ground, which happens sometimes. I was talking to a business broker friend of mine, and he's like, I can't even tell you how many times I've seen that. And so, yes, the idea is build your business as if you were going to sell it, and then you just have options. That's the whole point, because it's the right thing to do either way. Yeah. So it's the right move to build it as if you're going to sell it, because it's the right way to scale anyway. And then it has this extra perk of, if you did want to ever sell it, now you have something that's marketable.
To me, I have a quote here that I just wanted to read to you, because I think it really it summarizes a lot of the things that we've been talking about. And I came across this quote the other day, and I didn't write the author down, but if you Google the quote, the author will come up. But the quote is, "What more do you want?" When I hear people say that I want more than that, there must be more to it, I think, what do you mean? What else is there? The ingredients in our bodies were assembled from the heads of long dead stars over billions of years, and have assembled themselves spontaneously into temporary perfect structures that can think and feel and explore. And then those structures will decay away again at some point in the very far future, and there will be no structure left, only space. So here we are now. We exist in a magnificent window of opportunity where we can explore this beautiful universe. Why do you want any more? And so I think that's one extreme. It's like, don't do anything. Just go roll around in nature. Sure, that's one extreme. And then it's like, well, you got to make money to be able to have that opportunity. So I think there's just a balance of finding the happy medium between those two paradoxes, or the two sort of perspectives. And that's the key to living a really happy, fulfilled life.
Yeah, I love the quote, first off, Joey. So thanks for sharing. And I've been on both extremes. I've been in the hustle culture. You got to grind, work hard, and worked 100-hour weeks. I've also kind of gone and maybe as a retaliation after like a hustle culture period of my life, I remember being a little bit like, yeah, it's all good. I was listening to like nothing but Eckhart Tolle all day, just like I am meditating 24 hours a day, just listening to Eckhart Tolle's sweet German accent in my headphones here. But the whole point I'm trying to make is, honestly, neither was ultimately all that fulfilling, because there are duties and responsibilities that we're called to. Not to make this, gender specific necessarily, but as a man, as a provider for my family, it's like, that's a responsibility that I take on, that I choose personally to take on. And like, people are counting on me. So Yeah, no, I don't want to just roll around in nature. And if I don't roll around enough, then I become kind of a tyrant at home. I become kind of short tempered. I can become irritable. I can become, just not the most fun version of Andrew, who's really uplifting people. And, I'm stressed and overworked. That's not a recipe for success, in the household or at work, quite frankly, because your best ideas aren't going to come to you when you're stressed and overworked. So yes, I agree, Joey, finding that happy medium. It's just that balance between the hyper masculine and the hyper feminine, and kind of bobbing and weaving. And then, like I said, listening to the seasons of life and going with the flow and leaning in. It's like doing the right thing at the right time. What did Tony Robbins say? If you do the right thing at the wrong time, you get pain. And so it might sound great to hustle, but you got to listen to life. Is it calling you to hustle right now? And if not, surrender to that. Ask yourself a different question.
So I have a moment here. Just want to thank the sponsor of our episode, Utopia Experience. When looking for an event and video production company, many businesses just want easy AV at an affordable price, and they overlook the most important part of producing an event and telling a video story: building community. All event and video production companies have similar technology, but not all companies have the Utopia edge. You'll likely agree that attendee expectations are at an all-time high. And in this experience economy, every form of communication and every interaction has to have a form of uniqueness and personalization. That's where Utopia comes in. The greatest value Utopia brings to clients is that they're fueled by curiosity, passion, and the desire to innovate. Most importantly, everything they do is aimed at scaling connection and uniting hearts at speed and scale. And that means taking an otherwise transient and impermanent experience and making it transformational so it can live infinitely across time, transcending the four walls of your venue forever. Through unforgettable event experiences and thoughtful storytelling, Utopia Experience's mission is to help those that help the world. So what else is on your, just closing up here, man, what else is on your head or your heart that you think our audience needs to hear from you before we wrap up?
Well, I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the world. Depending on how enmeshed you choose to be in kind of the following the bouncing ball of the news, or what's happening in the daily events and current events. It's easy to get kind of negative, and it seems like America hasn't always been, lately it's been a little bit more tense than I certainly remember in the 90s growing up. And so I don't know. I think the biggest thing is, can you really take personal responsibility for yourself is maybe one of the biggest things that's been coming up for me lately. And the reality is that it's easy to kind of get all doom and gloom and kind of negative about what's happening if you're listening to the wrong sources. So just finding that centering for yourself and saying, no, I'm going to take responsibility for myself, because here's the deal, gang. Doesn't really matter who's in the White House. Doesn't really matter who's, running what part of your country or your state or whatever. The biggest person who's responsible for your life is you. And you know that, right? And we all know that. And so choosing not to be a victim and just, making sure we take responsibility for meeting our own needs, both personally and professionally.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Final questions. Favorite book, movie, or podcast show?
Favorite movie is The Departed. Okay. I don't know if have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't. I got to write that one down.
Yeah, dude, you guys see, I mean, it's definitely not like inspirational or anything. It's a mob movie. It's got like really cool, but I mean, great cast. We're talking Leo, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg. I mean, just the list goes on in terms of, the cast, and just the story is fantastic. Definitely not child appropriate. So make sure it's, after the kids have gone to bed, but that's my favorite movie. Favorite book, I talked about Eckhart Tolle earlier, but a book that definitely changed my life was The Power of Now. I keep going back to that. Business book that I'm really getting into right now is Scaling Up. It's a really cool kind of playbook for business. And so that's really awesome. And since you asked podcast, I'm just going to answer them all. But we have a show. I'll give a shameless plug here. We have the Better Than Rich show that you can check out on Spotify or Apple iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. But that's a gratuitous plug there, if you will.
That's awesome. What matters to you most in life?
What matters most to me is my family. And what's interesting, I know that's a little cliche, but I don't know that would have been the answer even 5 years ago, Joey. I might have said something else, and those shifting priorities, I probably would have said something like changing the world or making an impact. And, those things are there, but they might have just been moved to the second or third slot because the responsibility to my family is just so much higher. And understanding that at the end of the day, these are the people that I'm here to most impact. And if I impact them the most, I trust that the ripples will continue to ripple out.
Anything you're super proud of right now, either personally, I mean, you're obviously very proud of your family, and that's awesome. Anything else you're like really proud of right now that you want to brag on? Shameless moment with no judgment.
Yeah, I appreciate the space to do so. I mean, we are continuing to grow. We've gone from because we're a growing business as well. As we continue to grow, we are continuing to up level what we're able to do for our clients. But it's cool because we went from we've basically 3x'd our MRR in the last 5-6 months, and so MRR, monthly recurring revenue, for the uninitiated. But the idea there is like, yeah, if you implement some of these things, you can go from wherever you're at right now, whether that's, 10K, 50K, 100K a month, or whatever that looks like, you could triple it relatively quickly. So I'm just proud of that we've actually cracked the code in some things there. And that's going really well. I mean, besides that, yesterday was the last day of school for our 8-year-old, and he got the highest grade point average, and he got he had the most reading points. He got to pie his principal in the face with a cream pie. So, like the good old fashioned like clown pies. And so we were just super proud of him. That's kind of another little cherry on top right now.
That's awesome. Last question is, who is someone that inspires you that you think we should have on this podcast?
Right now, who's inspiring me is this guy named Dan Martell, who I think could probably get on the show. He's definitely starting to pick up steam a lot with his book, Buy Back Your Time. But this book, Buy Back Your Time, and the concepts in it are very kind of closely associated with what we're talking about. So as I was reading it, I'm like, this guy gets it. And so he's somebody who, from a business perspective, I think would really benefit you and your audience. So check him out, Dan Martell, Buy Back Your Time. I think you guys would love it.
All right. That's awesome. I lied. This is the last question. How can people get in touch with you? And
Sure.
Where can they find you?
Well, hey, if you want a virtual assistant, go to va.betterthanrich.com. Again, that's va.betterthanrich.com. That has all the information you want to get signed up. Or if you just want to talk with someone on our sales team, they'll be happy to connect with you. There's no pressure. We're very laid back. I'm very much kind of like, if it's not a fit, please don't sign up sort of guy. So we are very much, just there to serve on those calls. And if you want to learn more about what we're up to on the coaching side, go to automatedelegatesystemize.com to learn more.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation today, man. And glad we finally made it happen.
That's right, man. Hey, this was super fun. Thank you, Joey. And thanks to everyone listening. This has been super fun.
Hey, if this episode was valuable to you, then share it with someone that you love, someone that you know that could benefit from it. Also, be sure to subscribe, and depending on how you're listening, go ahead and leave a comment or review. This will help ensure that we are connecting with other nonprofit leaders so that we can get this critical information out to them. And if your company is in the early or even late stages of putting on an event, go to our website, utopiaexperience.com, and click the Book Us tab and schedule a free discovery call to see if our services would be a right fit for your event. And even if they're not, that's okay. I promise you our expertise can steer you in the right direction, so you'll get value either way. Thanks for listening to the Impact Roadmap, and we'll see you next time.